All right. It is Saturday, July 24, 2021, and we want to welcome you to one more edition of the Pastor's Roundtable. What's up, fellas?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing all right,
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just so excited to be here. I'm up here in Nashville, and it is hot outside.
Oh, wow.
And we are just so glad for air conditioning. I don't know who created it. I'm just glad they did.
It can't be nothing like South Florida, though, like Fort Lauderdale. Actually, it wasn't bad today. It was a little overcast and rainy, so we get some of those trade winds off the coast. So it was not terrible. Dr. Henry? Greetings.
I think I'm on now.
There we go. All right.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha. Yes.
Oh man, you know what? I don't know what's happening today, but I see my camera flickering on and off. But you know what? Hey, we're here together. So if I come off, I'm just gonna come back on.
That's messed up because I'm looking at my camera screen and I'm seeing a little red light flashing, and it's not the record button. So I don't know what's going on with my camera. I might lose me too today. Stephanie Scott says hi from Huntsville. Hello, Sister Scott. Samantha Barkley.
Sister Barkley, yes, she is in the house today. She is in the house. Listen, you know what? We've been having some really good conversations during the last couple of roundtables, and last week, oh my,
wow.
Pastor Abraham, Dr. Abraham Jules, and Dr. Henry Wright. What a word that they brung to us. About evangelism and church growth. That was powerful. That was powerful.
It sure was. You know, sad to say, you know, as you mentioned, Dr. Wright, you know, just the next day when we woke up, we got word about Pastor Henry Fordham and his wife. Oh, man, that put a damper on the weekend. Couldn't believe it. Could not believe it.
Yeah. That was just such a tragic situation, and it's one of those things that makes, you know, members and preachers, family alike, start asking God some questions, you know. But I guess
what a tremendous loss.
That he's got answers. I don't know if I know them yet, but I just got to have trust and faith that he's got the answer, and one day he's going to be able to sit down and give us the answers to things like that. And while it might not make sense right now, I've got hope that day it's going to make perfect sense.
And to our friends in Allegheny East, to our friends in the Allegheny East Conference, North American Division, family of the Fordhams, from the Pastors Roundtable, we do send our condolences. We want to let you know that we are, you know, praying for you and just praying for the family, because that was a very just tremendous loss, the Fordham family. So just going to continue to keep you in our prayers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, gentlemen, let's talk about today. Wait, hold on. We need everybody who's come on at this time to do something for us. We ask you this every week. Pastor Wade, what do we need everybody to do right now, man?
We need you to cooperate with us and share this broadcast. If it has been a blessing to you, share this broadcast with your network, with whoever you feel will be blessed by this. Just hit the share button. And while you're hitting the share button, why don't you like it and subscribe? We would love to have you be a part of us. We have plateaued a little bit on the number of folks who have subscribed to us on our YouTube page, and we would love to hit that 1,000 mark. And so we're asking you to become a committee of one to help us get to 1,000. Would you do that for us today? Help us to get to 1,000. So those that you share it with, remind them and ask them if they can please subscribe to the Pastors Roundtable.
You know, when you started out, Pastor Wade, I said, that's the preacher. He said, would you cooperate? I thought you were going to roll with cooperate with the Holy Ghost today. And
oh, my goodness.
Oh, my.
Dr. Henry, what's on the table today, man?
Listen,
I'm sorry.
You know, every week.
Elder, pastor, what's on the table today?
Friend, ex-roommate. But listen, you know, we're still in the pandemic. I think Last week, actually, last couple of weeks, we are reminded that we are still in a pandemic. We are opening up the churches, though, and we're trying to do that cautiously for some. Some are just, come as you are, right? But we want to get a feel of how is it for some who have returned. So we actually entitled this program, The Return. So we want to know, how is it? What are some things that might be different? What are some things that you may want to discard? We want to get a feel of what it's like now that people are returning back to the building. So this is going to be a really interesting show.
What is worship like? What is liturgy? I think in our titles and stuff, we use that word liturgy. We're gonna open that up a little bit later on, but good. So Pastor Wade, so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about worship in a post-pandemic world. What's going to be different? What's changed? What needs to remain the same? What should change? We're looking forward to that conversation. We know everybody's got an opinion on that, and we'd love to hear them. So as we go throughout this conversation today, we want you to chime in the chat. Pastor Wade, who is at the table today, Doc?
Today, we felt that we didn't just need to bring the heavy hitters. We had to bring the thunder hitters. So we went far and wide, we even crossed the border. We brought some heavy thunder hitters today. I'm excited to have these two guests at our table today. I am speaking none other than Pauline Christian, who is from Toronto, Canada. Let's give it up for our Canadians in our group.
Toronto is in the house.
Canada. She's here. She has been an advocate for youth ministries, as how I met her. But she has a perspective on ministry and a perspective on Christian lifestyles that I thought would be a great addition to this conversation today. And we have the renowned elder of the online Wakanda Seventh-day Adventist Fellowship, almost at church, Elder Saba Nwankpah, I think is how I said it. I may have said it wrong, but please forgive me, Saba. I'll go to the woodshed after that. But we're so glad to have these two women of God to be with us here today.
Absolutely. Saba Nwankpah. I think that I get that right. We got it right. Saba Nwankpah. Listen, okay. I want to say this about Saba. Saba is the founder or co-founder of one of the largest Seventh-day Adventist online communities, and particularly with people of color in the world, on the planet, in the universe. And so she had a vision, she had a mindset for it wasn't really, well, I'll have her talk to us a little bit about it, but I think it predated the quarantine and the pandemic, correct? Right. Yeah, so it was prior to that this online virtual space and safe space kind of thing was created. So I'm very interested to hear how that plays in, that whole concept plays into this conversation about what going back to church looks like. But ladies, we are just so excited and thrilled to have both of you with us today. I'm going to give you just a few seconds to just greet the audience, to say whatever it is that you want to say to whoever it is that you'd like to say it to. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about you and where you are, what you're doing, what's going on with you in your world. We normally give preachers about 30.7 seconds or so. We know you are not preachers, so we're going to give you, Pastor Wade, Dr. Henry, how much time should we give him today?
Let's give him 35 seconds.
35 seconds. Even we can't do an even number. That's just not very PRT of us.
This is an odd number.
Yeah. All right. 35.9 seconds. Let's do that.
The 9 second. Oh, you want to go all the
okay. All right. Saba, we're going to begin with you. Time is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. As was stated, my name is Saba Nwankpah. I live in West New York, New Jersey, which is actually the name of a town in New Jersey. I'm originally from Berrien Springs, Michigan. I was born and raised there for many years, of course. And professionally, I've been in the digital marketing space my whole career. So I started off at Essence, Then I was working at Food Network for many years in digital marketing and advertising. And it is true, I started Wakanda in 2008, which is also the same year I started my business, Taguza Solutions. And it was not for those of us who are about my age, the internet has been a thing for a very long time, and people commune there and connect there and are able to kind of experience life in a unique way that it can be complementary to in-person experiences. So when we started Wakanda, it was actually a reaction to the Black Panther movie and just the idea that Black people have there just is an experience that is nothing like what we see depicted in the media or in the world today, and trying to kind of base a Christian experience and community in that context was kind of the kind of goal and genesis of this. And then a pandemic happened, and we're still here. But we can talk a little bit more about that later. But I'm thankful to be here with you all. I'm the wife of one husband and the mother of three little girls. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that little window into Saba. Pauline, we're going to give you that time as well. Just share with us, say hello to anybody you'd like to, or just tell us just a little bit about what's going on with you and in your world right now. All right. Pauline, can you hear us? I know she had frozen up just a little second ago. Yes, we see a lot of the Wakanda fam checking in today.
Yes.
Hello to the Waynes.
Yes.
That's what we call ourselves. The
Waynes. All right. Well, it looks like we're having just a little bit of technical trouble coming out of Toronto today. So we're going to see if we can get that taken care of. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we will go ahead and get started. Pastor Wade, would you lead us as we get kicked off? And
all right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for your love, your mercy, and your grace. And as we have this discussion, direct us is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
All right. Well, Saba, it seems like you're going to carry us at the beginning here. Hopefully, Pauline will work it out, and we'll get things in place. Listen, our first question is this: having been away from the building for some time now, maybe I don't know if you have returned, or maybe some of our people have returned, but I'm not sure if Pauline has returned as yet. But what are you excited about, or what are you not so excited about as we return to worship in our buildings? Is there any anticipation or apprehensions?
Definitely both. As for me and my house, we're still in the house. My little ones are 9, 5, almost 5. Happy birthday, Danielle. And 2.5. And so they're not vaccinated yet. And, the reality is there's just been so much conversation online, which is the only way we can see each other. And there's a lot of people who seem to have, within our community, been resistant to the vaccine. And so I'm not really prepared to go back into a space until at least I know my kids have kind of some form of protection. I definitely am looking forward to going back. I definitely miss my church family. But in many ways, I don't feel like I haven't been with them because we are still finding ways to be community. My church in particular has church over Zoom. So it is a little bit more of an intimate experience than churches that are strictly on YouTube or on Facebook, where you're not kind of seeing the members or having a moment to just kind of check in and say hello. And different communities are different sizes and have different complexities. I live, my church is in Manhattan. And so I'm like, that's a lot of points of contact and just problematic contact tracing that you might not have if you're in Berrien Springs. And so, we would want to be prudent. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm in Florida. We have more cases in the state of Florida. Well, Dion and Pastor Henry and I are down here, and we're having more cases of that Delta variant down here than anywhere else. So you're saying, nah, I'm not going back right now, but you're not saying I'm not going back ever.
No, it's not a never thing, but I don't anticipate attending church every week ever again in my life. Like I think I'm gonna have and quite frankly, I had been thinking about it before, which is to have like a schedule of, maybe this week is the week we are going into church. There's another week that we're doing like a community service of some sort, and a week that we just are together at home, and like something where it's just not going in every week and like all that comes with that. That had been on my radar. My husband might be hearing this for the first time, but I don't. He's like, we're gonna do what? But I have so much appreciation, and I think I always did, of like how much can be accomplished as a family, as a person, within the Sabbath hours. And I think that, if maybe, let's say, different churches, so let me take a step back. I think the way we think about physical spaces is going to change across the board for every industry. Schools are thinking about it differently. Churches are, businesses are. So, let's say more people adapted this idea of like, all right, we're going to have this building the first and third Sabbaths, and then another whole community could have it on the second and fourth Sabbaths. Like there are dynamic ways of looking at the reality that, we don't need this space to pay mortgage for 30 days of the month to use it for roughly 8 hours of the month, So that's my thought. But I'm not a pastor.
Wow.
That's interesting.
You said a lot there. Coming from the heart, that we're not looking at church the same, but I know you were kind of thinking about doing something different as far as the weekly attendance. How did that come? How did that come to be? Like what gave you this insight to say, you know what, maybe, I'm still involved, I'm still doing ministry, I'm still doing a lot of great things, but do I have to be there every week? How did this come about?
I think I have 3 girls. So that means getting ready with hair on like Tuesday to be ready for Saturday. Like, there's a lot that goes into just being ready to be present in a space. But in all seriousness, I think I was experiencing burnout.
Okay.
Working, having to kind of have no intentional space. And so I think we were missing weeks at church, just incidentally, not intentionally. So it just made me really think about like, how do we be really intentional to protect the Sabbath in a really renewing and powerful way, and creating a lens for our girls as well to see the Sabbath in a really healthy and happy way, for them to inherit and kind of hopefully keep on as a tradition. I think that was the genesis of church for me. And, I think oftentimes people look at the pandemic as like what changed church, but we were having struggles getting people in the building before the pandemic. There was a challenge of physical gathering that was not related to threat of death. So I think being honest about that, we could look at reentry and really thoughtful ways of redoing it, because we were already many people were already having that conversation of like, why aren't the young people here? And, why don't you guys come to Sabbath school anymore? Like those were pre-pandemic conversations. Right. And I do think there's so much nostalgia, quite frankly. I think that's going to drive a lot of people to just come back and just be ready for 9:30 maybe, or whatever time your Sabbath school starts. But I don't know that it'll be long lasting if it's kind of just nostalgia, because it's like, oh yeah, you forgot about all the things that really annoyed you.
Wow.
Well, listen, Pauline, good to have you here. I don't know, we didn't give her a chance to give us the 35 seconds about her. I don't know, Pastor Paul, do you want to do that now? Just tell us a
Yes,
little
let's
bit about
do that.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm so blessed to be here and to be asked to be a part of such a critical discussion as we move forward, especially as Seventh Adventist. I am a community activist. I am very much involved in my church at different levels. Pastor Roger Wade knows me for years. I've worked with the government, different levels of government as it relates to community activities. I was the president of the Black Business and Professional Association of Canada for over 10 years. I've traveled with Prime Minister, gone to the White House, worked in the ghetto, go to Africa. I am a lover of community and I'm a humanitarian. I have, I received many acknowledgements across the board, from Canada Top 20 Women to you name it. But I just love service, and I think my groundedness started in the church, and that's why I love my church so much. So anything to do with church and community, I am in the center of that. So thanks again for that opportunity to be a part of this critical conversation.
Oh, wow. And we are excited and blessed to have you with us. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Pauline, we'd like to have you take a crack at that question that Pastor Wade, you want to
Sure. So Pauline, one of the first question we asked was, we've been away from the building for some time now. And I don't know if your group has returned or churches around you have returned, but what are you excited about, or what are you apprehensive about in returning back to the building?
Well, for us, we are a very forward-thinking church, and I think outside of the deaths, I think COVID was a great thing for ministry. I say so because I believe that as a church community, we should be on the cutting edge of ministry. And I find that we were too physical centric in terms of, having church. We're doing church, so we're having programming. We were not having ministry in terms of reaching out to the community and making an impact. So, Adventism in the church is safety. But with COVID, we had to get out of that comfort zone. And COVID forces us out of it. And then because our pastors, pastors like mine, like Pastor Ellis, he was already a forward thinker. He's a scientist. So I can't, again, he was on the cutting edge. But for pastors who are more, they feel safety in the church, right? So now when you're forced out to bring your program to a level of standard, so you can, because now you're on the World Wide Web. At church, we always say, when you go virtual, you're not just talking to the members who may plug in, that you may see plug in. You are talking to the world. So do you have, or do you maintain that standard that when someone sees it, we can be a tool for ministry, because they're going to say, what is actually going on there? I need to see, because God is being glorified. We are moving the agenda. We are moving the dial, and we are praising God at the same time using technology. So, I find that that COVID did a great thing for Adventism. So, but at the same time, I want to be understanding enough to know that we did have a few deaths, but we also are now more ready to do ministry across the globe.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Right.
A couple of questions that have come up, or one in particular that I'd like to address. I was speaking to a former elder of mine just on yesterday, and I was asking him about what the climate seemed to be in that church in regard to people's intentions and desires to come back into the building. And he said, well, there is that crew that it's not church, it's not real worship, it's not real church unless they are in the building and the pastor is in the robe and the full shebang. That it ain't real church. It's, behind a screen, it's not real. Then we found, he said, and then there's the Fruit Loop troop. Or the Raisin Bran clan that they're going to sit at home and eat their Fruit Loops during Sabbath school and their Raisin Bran during church and whatnot, and they are fine with it. That's church for them. They're cool with that. So the question that Stephanie, where did it go? Stephanie Scott brought up: does there seem to be an age factor when it comes to those who are wanting to return versus those who are, they're part of the Fruit Loop troop? Any ideas on that?
I think that's an interesting question, Pastor Paul. Before our guests chime in, the reason I'm smiling at that question is because just this week, I was in our workers' meeting where our president was addressing that same issue. And based on a study from the Barna Group. And he was saying, based on that study, that, people want to return, But again, the Barna Group, different denominations, is interesting to see how it plays in Adventism. So just want to chime that in there. So I guess Pauline or Saba, whichever one wants to
actually want to ask
that question.
Because I want to, if I recall correctly, it was the Barna Group that did the research that determined that regular members attend church once a month. That was deemed a regular member within Christianity. Or it may not have been the Barnard Group, but I think there's one, I think maybe more to my initial point.
No, you're correct.
Sorry?
You're correct.
Pass away, go ahead.
It's the Barnard.
Yeah, so Barnard
Group.
And I never know, right? So if I hear that stat and I think, oh, okay, so the people who come to church once a month want to come back to church. And that is not necessarily like, okay, that sounds reasonable. That's me, right? That's me at some point. I think to the question, it's a complicated question. I think we have these ideas of like there's a certain demographic, I'm going to use the word demographic, that wants to be in church, and I think we stereotype that as older people. But the reality is there were always older people and people of all ages who are not the sick and shut in. And quite frankly, our pre digital ministries always shut them out. And we always knew they were there and we just kind of pray with them within the four walls and like never try to make that outreach. So, I do think there are definitely ones who maybe stereotypically are like myself, who are in their 30s, who are like, let me get my Lucky Charms and enjoy this situation here, and are totally fine with that. But I think we have to be careful in looking at a solution as being targeted to any one particular group, because there are people who are younger, who maybe don't have young kids, or who are just looking for community and like contact, maybe haven't had a hug in 18 months. And so having physical spaces for people to meet up do reach and connect with lots of different people of different ages for just different reasons. But I do think that when we look at like a digital or a social media platform as a solution to young people, we negate the realities that there's a lot of invisible members of all ages that need that contact and need that connection through digital means.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just chime in, can I at this point?
Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with Saba, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm going with
Baba.
Baba.
Okay, Baba. Okay. Saba hit a good point in that we have to look at the demographic that we serve, right? People come to church for different reasons. Not all that we know of, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you look at us as human beings, you look at us psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, physically, whatever it is, right? However, the people who are coming to church, right, might be people who are empty nesters, right? So there's always a need based on our bio. There's a need for us to wanting to be with someone else, right? And some people take advantage of that, right? But in this community that we now reside in with the pandemic, it has created a brand new community. So now as a church, as a forward thinking church, we got to think of how do we create a hybrid type of church? Because we may be leaning towards more virtual membership because now the generation X, Y, whatever you call them, millennials, they may say, okay, I don't have to drive my fast car to church and use up all that gas because COVID made me comfortable. I never used to make it to Sabbath school. So now, in our church, what we find is that Sabbath school numbers are gone up. Sabbath school, the Sabbath schools for young people are now 30, 40. Can you imagine the Sabbath school for young person, a class, right? 30, 40 for the young people. They used to have 5, 6. Now, and people used to say, oh no, they're goners. They're done. They don't want to come to church because they measure church based on attendance. But especially for Apple Creek. Apple Creek is, the church in Canada. That's the way, I know there are the Torontonians, right? But, we believe in, we believe in driving church. So church becomes the space that people want to be. It's not the afterthought, right? So when you're looking at our church and thinking of, okay, so now the young people are thinking, I can be at Sabbath school at 9:00. I don't have to show my face on Zoom. I can, and not that they were for, you put them on the list. You know what list our strong members put our young people on, right? Not that they were really on those lists, blacklisted in the past. But because of this church is not a community church, it's more Chinese. We are living in the capital of the technology capital of Canada, where you find the Chinese and others, right? Indians, that's there. We cannot appeal to them. We don't know the language, but we're here. We have one of the biggest churches in Canada. We're next to the city hall, right? Now, the people we have coming in are people 50, 60K is coming in. So by the time they get to church, they are an hour, 2 hours out. We want to still keep church at 9:00. Now we're doing Zoom Sabbath school at 10. We were 9 before. My question, are we going to come back to 9 after we see the results? Church and spirituality is not about attendance. Wow. Make it in this space available for us to get the young people who are our future and our present to be a part of it. They got to be a part of the conversation. If they're not part of the conversation, we're going to die. So it's going to be a dying church. So change up the dynamics, change up the infrastructure, and create a space where they can exist and survive and be our future leaders. And I know I went all over the place.
I love it.
Wow, good stuff. Yeah.
I love it. This kind of goes to the next question here. So, been out for, out of the building, most places been out the building for a long time, right? Over a year. People now just are coming back into the building, but realizing that there are other ways, right, to create fellowship and to create community. So what are some of the lessons that we've learned during, and I want to say the height of the pandemic, and I want to be very cautious on that because, again, as I said earlier, the numbers are rising again, right? But what are some of the lessons that we've learned during the past year about how we do church absent from the building and the effectiveness of that? And then as we begin to have this reentry or this reopening to the building, what are some of the things that you would like to see in the in-person space? And some of the things that you would like to see maybe discarded from the in-person worship? So we go with Saba first.
Yeah. I'm not over romanticizing going back just yet.
Okay.
I think, and I say that because I think a lot of how we used to talk about church was griping over this and griping over that. And, I'm hoping that once we do go back to in person, we can just look at it with fresh eyes, based on because again, I don't know what that timeline is for people. And so, is proximity going to be something that people desire? Are people going to want to be sitting in pews and squeezing people in like sardines? Like, how do we reorient ourselves to being around strangers? What does friendliness look like in a space where like maybe hugging and handshakes are questionable? Like, there's a lot of things that I would probably just want to again look at with fresh eyes and say, maybe here's a different way of doing that. But I will say, and I do hope that every community does this, is that they look at it in their local context and with the people that are there, right? I know there are different practices where everyone's like, okay, well, this should work everywhere. But the reality is, what grows in Michigan doesn't grow in Florida. That's just like a basic agriculture thing. And so, I hope different churches come up with different solutions that are really just honest and reflective of what the needs are locally. And I think they will bear appropriate fruit for those reasons, because everyone's being kind of open to the spirit of what the Lord is leading them to do, specifically to open up like hearts and minds and make people feel safe and aware. But I really miss congregational singing. I really miss that. That's like a sensory experience that you can't duplicate. Sermons you respectfully can duplicate via digital methods, but you can't replicate the experience of like singing or even laughing in person. So I feel like those are things I miss, but I feel like until a while from now, that's going to be actually very terrifying. So I'm not rushing into congregational singing just yet.
Yeah, I have to admit, gentlemen, I'm feeling that where Saba is. I don't do Fruit Loops, but I do Raisin Bran. I'm part of that Raisin Bran clan. And I'll admit Saba, that's the one thing. I remember going to a funeral in the middle of this pandemic down here in South Florida, where we had the highest numbers in the state, and people were crammed into a fairly large church. There was no social distancing. A lot of people were wearing masks, but when they stood up and they sang just an old hymn. I'm trying to remember what it was, but there was just something about being in that space. And I know I'm probably getting COVID particles all over me, but there was just some electricity in the building as they sang. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, that's what I missed the most as well. But the rest of it, yeah. I shouldn't say it. I'm a preacher. I should have kept my mouth shut.
Sorry.
Yes, Pauline.
Yeah. I am an entrepreneur, right? Have family business for 18 years, worked for corporate Canada for most of my life. And for me to keep my job as a director for Fortune 500, I have to, every day, I got to be creative. How I going to show that I am the best of the best, right? So I am finding that we should run church the same way. We should, when the members are in the pews, they are there for something, because there's something special going on in here. And so if we don't teach our pastors to be leaders and business owners of the gospel, then they're going to think that preaching the same old story, Sabbath, should keep the members. And now the members that they used to appeal to are baby boomers and below. And now you have these millennials who are virtually everywhere. They go a million miles a minute. They have no time for slow stuff going on because they're part of corporate America, corporate Canada, where 6 days a week, everything is going at a certain speed. You come in giving them the same old religion. I think if people know that you're making the effort to be current and present and relevant in your moment, understanding that you understand the lay of the land, right? You understand the lay of the land, what is happening in your community, that you're not here as Seventh-day Adventists and the world exists over there. But if the young people know that you are present, you know what is going on out there with the government, you are seated in the seats where governments are sitting, talking about your religion. When you have major stuff happening in your community, you are present. Then the young people will know that, you know what? Yeah, I'm a part of something great. Not to push myself up, but I remember, right, being the president of the BBPA, the prime minister, maybe I shouldn't say this online, is there, right? He's my keynote speaker, and he's doing it on the Sabbath. And he comes, and because I'm the president, you need to be the first one to greet the prime minister. Even though I'm not so anal about, I'm anal about the Sabbath, but I didn't have to do it. But for me, as a 70 Adventist, I'm saying, could you wait 15 minutes more, please? Because my Sabbath, I'm not over the Sabbath threshold yet to meet him. His guys thought I was crazy. I'm saying, when we're in position to show respect to what we serve and who we serve, stand up. But if you're not delivering the goods for them to respect your leadership, they may not want to do that. But if they know that Seventh Adventists, when we have Seventh Adventists in the camp, we're going to get the best of the best, and we see what their leadership produces, right? Then the thinking about us as a church is different. So let's step up to the plate after the multiple pandemic that we just had. Not just COVID. We have financial pandemic. We have social pandemic. We have all this stuff. On Friday, I'm meeting with governments and all that stuff, talking about the 300 million that they're giving the Black business people to see how we can, move the dial. 293 million, it's not much money. Don't get excited about that. But we can't speak to it if we don't have the head of futuristic head of leadership, growth, and advancement. We got to speak to those issues and about sustainability. You can't sustain the church using the same old from 1920s to now. It's non-existent. Church is going to die. And I think we have some of the best. And when I used to hang out with Pastor Wade and the brother, you remember the youth congresses? We had a movement going on with our young people. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But when Pastor Wade called, I said, Pastor Wade, it's nice to know that Canada, we had that friendship where our young people were moving together with our U.S. young people. Can we get back the movement? So when I see you guys doing what you're doing, I want to take my hat off to you. Get the conversations, get those dialogues going, and get action. Bring the business-minded people, the strategists in the game. How are we going to move this ministry? This is a good conversation to have. And I hope a lot of pastors are kind of chiming in, understanding that don't go back same old. It doesn't work unless you want to kill the church. You just want to commit suicide, just like that, of God's people. Wake up, smell the possum, and get the job going. Think new, think engagement, how you're going to engage those young people. Think wholesomeness. Refocus that thermometer and make sure you have a plan, and you have to be able to chip off of the plan minute by minute. It's incremental. If you remember, the results is based on the infrastructure. If the infrastructure is weak, the outcomes are going to be weak. Put the right pillars in, the right foundation in, and let us move together as a collective to move the gospel agenda. I'm sorry, I went off.
I feel like I need to
can
find
just
some
imagine
organ
that
music and play the
on this
appeal
stuff.
right about now.
I think my thing died on me. Can you hear me?
So yeah, we can hear you. So listen, based on what I've heard in this last exchange, something that is there's a new word out there that everyone's talking about is community. Everyone's talking about this community. Community. We have to build community. In your experience, I mean, Saba, you have created a community online, but here we are trying to go back into the building. Was there community before, or is this something new in terms of, is this a new understanding because of COVID that we have to build a new community?
Well, there's nothing new under the sun.
Sorry, guys, I'm back.
No worries.
Technology. That's fine.
No worries. I think the ways in which people understand and value community have shifted, but they're not all. It's not a new concept. So, and again, sometimes when we have these conversations, they're so centric to Adventism, and they're not really acknowledging just how much the whole world is in the same boat as we are. Everyone that has real estate and that is trying to connect people is in the same conundrum of how do we connect with the people that we're looking for in the ways that we want to. And so there are lots of resources and there's lots of thinking going on around this. And so the thing around community, I will say, is one, I think the reality that a lot of churches have to consider is that they're still in physical spaces. They have zip codes, and to Pauline's point, like there are people who are coming an hour to come to her church, and similar to us, we drive an hour to go to our church. But some of our churches, and this is maybe an anti-young person thing to say, are going to have to let go of all of the efforts they were doing online in order to refocus on being in a physical space and connecting with people. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. You can't take the one or two, even if you have a bounty of 3 people on your media team, and have them to be astute and really great at being kind of omnipresent physically and digitally. So again, wow. every church needs to be really intentional about like what seed are we going to water when it comes to rebuilding our church communities. Wow. And what is who are those people and what are we trying to get them to accomplish? Make that something measurable. And for us online, we have a name for ourselves. We have a logo. Like there's little things in which people can feel belonging to. But the only other thing I think is really important for people to consider, especially church identity, is like people may not have like exclusive relationships with their churches anymore. I think that might be another dynamic that people consider as like the church community, right? So by all means, and on paper, like I am a member of Advent Hope Church in New York City, but because of the quarantine, I'm like also a member-ish at Tacoma Park Church, and our giving reflects that, right? But like it's not a competition. I know there's language within the pastoral set about sheep stealing, but like we can have additive, or supplementary church communities, which is always the way I felt about Wakanda. And I will take this time to say, before Wakanda started in 2018, and we were really intentional, Pastor Josiah and I was like, I'm never going to have a program on Saturday. We'll have Friday night Vespers, because at the time, nobody was doing online Vespers. I was like, I don't want to be a distraction, for lack of a better term, to being in person and having church with people if you can. So we just never, ever, ever had church on Sabbath. But we did Friday night. Like we can have this moment together, and then people can go wherever they go across the world to church, if that is their thing. Because, not everybody's necessarily an active Seventh-day Adventist. And so, having picked that lane, we weren't necessarily in competition when the pandemic started and everybody's church was online on Sabbath. Like we could always bring all those sermons into the group, and everybody could maybe find a new community or find a new church. That was like always something really awesome. So if someone comes out of quarantine and they're like, we're going to meet at 7:00 in the morning, that's a time of the day for some people in your local area where there's like, I'm going to the 7:00 service, and I can still go to the 11:00 elsewhere, and then a potluck somewhere else. Like, kind of setting up tables and seeing who shows up and finding new ways to really think about stuff. Like, people will be attracted to that. And you just really don't know who you'll pick up along the way, but don't be afraid of it.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I have loved over this time. I think, as Pauline mentioned earlier, I've loved seeing the content of that our churches and our pastors have had to come up with in this virtual space, that are scratching where people have always been itching, but we didn't have what we needed to be able to reach there, simply because we didn't take the time to think it through. But now we've been forced into the habit of having to do it. Listen, if you are just joining us for this broadcast today, we want to welcome you. We want to thank you for tuning in to the Pastors Roundtable this edition. We are dealing with liturgy in a post-pandemic or a post-quarantine world. Our guest today, Saba Nwankpah. She is the first elder of one of the largest 9,000 member Seventh-day Adventists. We're going to call it, can we call it a church? I know it was calling a church initially. Roger's a conference man. He says, no, we can't call it.
No, it's a fellowship. And I also don't call it
there
church.
We go.
But it's 11,500. I want all my sheep counted.
All of them counted. All right, 11,500. My bad. I was following your husband's number that he put out there. It was Woo's fault.
I think that was what we had in the first week. That was why you said that.
First week. That's right.
We don't
That's
want
right.
them to get in any trouble. We don't want them to get in any trouble. It's a fellowship.
You can find that fellowship on Facebook as a Facebook group. I think it's open for you to join if you want to go and check it out. We are also happy to have with us all the way from Toronto, Canada, Pauline Christian. She is a woman of many talents, and all you have to do is tune in, stay tuned, and just listen, and you're going to grab some good nuggets. We want you to do this for us, Ro, in the middle of the program today. We want you to go, if you have not hit the like button, if you have not shared this broadcast, we want you to take the opportunity to do that now. We've got half of this program left, and there's somebody that you know that needs to hear what's coming up in the rest of this program. So make sure you go ahead and take the opportunity to share and to like that thing. Just by hitting the like button, that's going to trigger some of the analytics or that's going to make more people be able to see this stream. So do that for us, and I trust that somebody else is going to get some of what you're getting right now. So here's a question I want to move to. So it sounds like, Saba, you are not back in the building. Pauline, I wasn't clear from what you said. At Apple Creek, are you guys back in your building yet or no?
No, we're preparing to go back, but we have strong guidelines and protocol, and we want to make sure that, number one, we're in compliance with the protocol to do with the community in which we're located, right? So as a church, we're a very professional church, very much involved with in the political arena, right? Because we got to keep them close to us so we know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so we are not the rebels who are going to go outside of the protocol, because we also know that God has made us wise, that nobody can keep anything from us now because we have a virtual space. But if we're going into church, we have to understand the nuances. You have to understand the protocols, social distance stuff, and all the other stuff that we have to take care of before we go into church. And also understand how we're going to manage all of that. Because if I'm coming to church and I'm coming an hour away and I want to get to Sabbath school, and by the time I get to Sabbath school, there's a long lineup with some of the ushers saying, did you go outside of the country? Did you take your shots? And this one said, no, she didn't take it. No, this one is lying. And then now they're fighting at the front of like, do we know what we're opening ourselves up to, right? When we open the doors to say we are ready to go in, what is readiness? What does it look like, right? And what is going to take to manage the readiness? So this is where we need the visionaries and the strategists who have their ears to the ground to ensure that they understand the protocol out there. They're working with public health, right? They're working with the chief executive officer, responsible medical officer. You understand all the documents coming down from our governments to know that when you open church, a lot of eyes will be open to see what you're doing, and that you have it. and what you're going and look at the implications and repercussion of you opening and what it has to do with the members. And remember the multiple demographics that you have within the membership, right?
Okay.
What are the nuances? And now on top of the prior to us going virtual, remember, right? Now you have a new group of people, and those came in from listening online. So how are you going to create a hybrid? Because I have a charitable organization, educational organization, and the role is leave no child behind. I think that as leaders, I work for a competitor, right? The reason why we're able to scale up, because you know what? Competition keeps us grounded. And you have to wake up every morning with more juice and more juice. How you keep your clientele? Get up church and you get some juice as to how you keep this new demographic of people understanding that you have 200 more you never had, and they don't know what your church looks like.
Wow.
It has to be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. So listen, I wanna first of all, I wanna correct myself on Wu just said earlier that there was 9,000 engaged every week. He knows, Saba. He want to let you know he knows that there's 11.5, and he was just saying that there's 9,000 engaged. So that was my bad. I quoted him incorrectly, so I apologize for that. By the way, Pauline, I wanted to let you know, and I think Saba, but for our guest, there's a little window to the right, a little icon to the right of your window. If you click that, you will be able to see all of the chat that's coming in your window as well. I don't think
I see that, and
you found that. Okay,
awesome. I'm happy having some supporters on the U.S. side.
Awesome. All right, so here's, I want to romanticize that question if I can a little bit, since Saba said she didn't want to romanticize. I want to romanticize that journey back. So neither one of you are back in the building yet. But what's one of the first things that you'd like to do, that you envision yourself doing once church does open up and you are back in your building? Is there a romanticized vision in your head of this is what that day is going to be like, and this is the first thing that I want to do when you get back there? And then a follow-up to that, what would be some of the challenges, like in your specific church or in churches in general? And although we've covered some already, I think we've covered quite a bit of that. What might be some of the challenges that you see in going back into the building? And just for conversation's sake, let's take the health concerns off the table for this question. I think we all know that there can be some health concerns going back, but there be some other concerns that you would have in going back. So number one, what is the first thing that you want to do, and what might be some of the challenges in doing that? Whoever wants to go first on that one.
I'll let Saba go.
Politician. You know, I miss hugs. You know, I do. I miss hugs from like the when we all get to heaven playing a song and we kind of meet and greet each other. Like, I like that.
For our audience, you can answer that too in the chat, because we'd love to see what for all of you out there as well. What's one of the first things that you'd like to do when you go back?
What do I like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I was being honest. Like, I'm not really romanticizing any of it. I think the singing and hugs will be something that, like, I will really look forward to doing. But again, I think because that's what I want out of the physical experience, I'm gonna be the last one to be there. Like, I'm gonna let y'all go ahead. You know, I'm gonna let Caleb and Joshua go ahead and try it out and come back and report.
There we go.
And see. But yeah, I think that's it. I think in terms of anything I'm apprehensive about, I think the opposite of that is true, which is, you know, we always have a really bad rep, not just generally speaking, that, you know, Christians are not warm and they're standoffish and all that kind of stuff. And like, if I'm if all of this just kind of compounds this idea that were standoffish. And I'm like, well, I'm hugging all the people that I saw their vaccine cards on social media, and they're like, whatever. Like, I think
Making a
Pauline's right.
list.
It's like I'm making a list. I'm checking it twice. I'm like, you know, and also what will be hard for me as a parent is helping my kids to learn how to navigate in this space with whatever additional rules that like they'll have. So, maybe there'll be children's ministries, and we have so many really great ones out there who will have the equivalent of like, going back to church like they did for going back to school. So there was a lot of people who made like children's books or videos around like, here's what to expect when you go back to church or to school rather, that maybe if some of that was taken off of the burden of parents, could make it a little easier for the kids, because we were already worried about people being like, get your kids to be quiet. And there's going to be another layer of like, children decorum in churches, maybe, that will be under pressure for.
Yeah, I think parents are going to be holding their kids a little bit tighter. Some of those kids who used to go and pick up and hold and squeeze, parents might be a little, yo, hey.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Pauline.
Yeah, for me, I miss the fellowship, but because most of my life was in leadership and owning my own business, I am everything for me. There has to be a number, it's got to be calculated. I have the faith piece too, right? But I'm more a strategist. I'm moving into this like a scientist. So now church just opened after 2 years. I'm in there looking at the shifting dynamics, what I need to observe when I go to the board, what I can gather in order to make the right change so our membership is happy. So I wouldn't be jumping in and hugging people right away. And you're talking about someone, I've never been sick in my life, never taken an aspirin. I'm fanatical about almost everything I do. I do everything I'm overt. Yeah. But and so for me, I gotta, I think God has given us the wisdom to check things out. And that's why for me and my board, our board, I'm thinking, okay, can we make sure there's a prototype, that we have enough data? So empirical data, we can use this to say, okay, someone tested it over there and this is what they got, right? So can we use that to see how we fashion ours? Then I don't want to be the scapegoat. I don't want to throw my people first out there and then they're going to be the ones setting the records for others. And then I'm going to lose them in the process because I throw them out there and did not protect their walls, the walls in which they reside. Right? So for me, I believe we should wait, get the statistic down, work with governments, work with the public health department, know the data, then make the right decision, because people are going to come with the mask on. How do you know that you're improving the relationship, right? My romanticizing this is like, if you have a relationship, physical relationship, and after you haven't seen the person for a long time, they come back with a mask. That's my romanticizing it.
Wow. Yep.
Helping because the way they're coming, inhibits relationship. Because you still have to be miles, 8 feet apart. You have to wear your mask. People are singing and they're saying that, okay, I can't sing with a mask. A lot of people saying they can't sing with a mask. Right? So it seems like I'm back into church, but I'm not experiencing the fellowship, because at church I go for fellowship and love. It's not there. So how do we create that? And so let's create a prototype, test the prototype, and then apply whatever the outcomes are, so we are better prepared for a larger community, church community.
All right.
Very good.
Right. These are some excellent points. Just talking about the mindset, of we're doing ministry. I'm apprehensive of really going back into a building, because the main thing is ministry, and if ministry is happening in this space here, we want to make sure that we implement all the concepts and all the things in this space here, so that when we go, if we, when is that time, right, to go back to the building, we can make sure that ministry is still happening. So let me ask you this. So as we think about it again, people are going back into this building. What do you think? What do you expect from the pastors, from the leaders? What do you expect for them to address as they get back in the building? Because in the virtual space, I mean, I don't know about you, but when things were really closed down, and man, I was just looking at community, and we had our online ministry there from the church, and just also supporting my brothers and sisters in Christ. Wow, it was all about the community. I mean, the messages were about the community. Messages were about engagement. Messages were about let's help one another out, and so these online ministries start popping up, and just a lot of collaboration, right? So as we get back into this building, what do you expect from the pastors? What do you expect from the leaders? What are some of the key areas that you feel need to be the focus?
All right, I'm going to get my counter to count all the people who are going to say shorter sermons. I know that's going to be number one, shorter sermons.
No, so I'm not going to say shorter sermons. I'm going to actually say, one, I would love it if they had like reorientations. Like if whether some of that was in person for people, and say like, all right, we're coming in on a Tuesday at 8:00 p.m. and we're gonna let people kind of enter in the space, just casual, explain different things, do a tour, whatever that is, right? Because I don't know how much of these buildings have changed, because I feel like there's too much business to necessarily just walk in cold on a Sabbath morning. So I think kind of separating the specifics around managing in the space from the worship time, I think could go a long way of just letting people to the point of like, there's going to be so much anticipation for those people who are going to be coming back to church that it's going to just be like 2019 all over again. Like, but I think there has to be a time and space for just like the critical conversations. In addition to that, I think the pastors, leaders, leadership team, boards, there should be a lot of, very explicit communication around expectations for people who are coming into the space. And I think giving people the language for how they're gonna interact with one another, and saying, all right, if you come across somebody with a mask, leave them alone. I mean, whatever your terms are in your space, so that people kind of have terms of engagement within your context, because every church is going to be different for whatever reason. And so I feel like people will need some confidence coming back into these physical spaces of what it is they're doing there and why they're doing it. And if there's going to be a change, that the same method is applied to how that's going to happen. So if you do a set where people don't like announcements, I know this. So I just for the record, yes, I have a large Facebook community. People still don't read the announcements. It is the elect, and that's the 10%. Maybe of people who will read the announcements. But I just do think it is on leaders to have been able to say it exists, and also keeping in mind creating it in multiple modalities, so that if it is people who need to hear it in person, if it is people who are only going to read it on their phone, if it is people who are only going to interact with you on social media, that you've been contextual in how you deliver that. And again, people are going to complain. There's not enough announcements. There's too long of announcements. The sermon's too long. I wanted 15 songs. Like, I just don't. I think we should just accept that those dynamics are always going to exist. I did want to, and I know I'm slightly changing gears, but Rob Peters has been talking a little bit about smaller churches and possibly having a digital outreach. I love smaller churches for being smaller churches that do that kind of work and have that level of community. I lived in Berrien Springs. PMC was the church that you went to when you wanted like a mega church with the whole media play. Like, that was an experience. But then separately, All Nations was its own thing. And so if your church is more like, respectfully, like an AA meeting of people who are very intimate with one another and are kind of having deeply personal experiences, don't dilute that with needing to have a digital persona, so to speak, because then you can't have both in certain ways. So I don't want anyone who has a smaller church to feel like we're not being innovative if in fact we're being, digital and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's still very powerful and very innovative to find ways to bring people in person. But again, if you're going to be closing down your digital offerings, research other places where people can go, because if you are in a digital community, you don't physically have to be anywhere. You could be watching a church anywhere in the world, quite frankly. So, the fact that 2 or 3 people might not be able to watch your program anymore because you shut down, I wouldn't keep doing it, quite frankly, if you could be more powerful in person with whatever resources the Lord's given you. Not everybody had the 10 talents.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Saba, one of the things, and to the other pastors here, well, first of all, I just want to run this by the other pastors, because I think we've all experienced this. It's funny that we often have a host of people who complain about the announcements in church and how long they take. Have you ever, guys, to my other pastors here, have you ever realized or seen that when those same individuals then are elected to become a departmental leader, then those turn out to be the same people wanting you to read their announcement, nobody else's, but now the announcements have to go out. They complained about it before, but now when it's their program or their event, now they want all the program. It's hard to win in that scenario. All right. We lost Pauline again. She should be.
Yes.
I'm sure she'll be back with us shortly. Roger.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where we were going to head to, but
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the impact, or not the impact, the skewing or the understanding from Saba and from Christine, Pauline. The how they're thinking about this, because as a pastor, someone made a comment about, I think Pauline made a comment about pastors should have a sense of organization and business, but that's not what we go to school for. We go to school to learn how to take the word of God and twist it and use it and interpret it and get it behind. So we really don't have the business acumen. It's a blessing when that's additional skill you have. But as members, what is it that we can do is, as we head back into as we go to the return. I don't want to say head back into the building. As we go into the return, maybe that's the new thing. We're not necessarily going into the building. We're returning back to some kind of connection, some kind of community. We talked about some lessons. We talked about some things you would like to see happen, but what exactly? What can pastors do to engage? From your perspective, what can we do to engage you to help us meet the needs of things that we may not be oblivious to, or we are oblivious to, I should say.
Which question are we on? Oh, sorry. I'll just answer. I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that our membership has just gone through trauma, right? Because we're not robots, right? We have to serve our community, our church community, understanding that, we need to preach the gospel, but we're preaching to people who have different needs. So if you watch the numbers, mental illness went crazy. Divorce rate went crazy. All this stuff is happening, but we think that it's not happening to the church. The church is over here in a community by itself, and reality doesn't go over there or disturb it. So we would have to think of really check the thermometer as to where my membership is at. We need to do Survey Monkey. Get a feel. How can we get a feel for the temperature of the church, where the people are? when we make the effort to do those little things, to hear them speak their minds or to have them be engaged and have a say, then they know that you are really moving the church thinking of them. Because if we don't, no, they don't have to come, because we have to take some serious look at virtual membership. The people, we may lose a percentage of our people, and they may just say, oh, Seventh-day Adventism is a global church. It's a global movement. Anywhere I go, I have a cousin, I have a brother. So this one doesn't suit me well, I go over here. Right? So I think we just have to think of that we need to think of the people's needs, their personal needs, their mental needs, their psychological needs. We need to think of that. We also got to think that some of them have been hit financially. For example, my family, we decided that we're going to do a food drive during COVID. And it's not for the people who are marginalized in our social view, but for people in our church. If they want some food, you don't have to put your name. Just go take it. Don't stigmatize it, because people have needs, but they dress up in that clothes that can fit them from they were 19 because they never change weight. And they come to church and you think that business as usual. You're not digging deep to say, what just happened to my membership? And how I need to assess that, and also speak on behalf of those who will not speak, because we have to be a voice for the voiceless. So how deep are we going in finding out? Are we going to say, okay, they never said it, so I don't want to pry? You don't want to pry because you don't want to address it, because you don't know how to address it. And there are people in our church and in our churches who have the credentials. They have the teaching, learning, whatever. Pull on those people. We don't have to use only the elders or the people on our board. I always say, when I have a team, this team is given to me by the nominating committee. It doesn't mean that, okay, I stop that service or ministry because I don't have enough people. No, you are given the leadership. You are the CEO or the VP or senior VP of your department. Go find officers in the church or other people in the church that can assist you. Show them the benefits of being under your leadership, what they can gain without being given money. So we are given a huge capacity. Seventh-day Adventism has the capacity to move the whole entire world. We're talking about money. We have money. We have all the resources. Wow. We have money to do this, because now we have to do more. Money is there, but you're not engaging the people who have the money, because we hate on the people with the money.
Mercy.
Instead of bringing them into the church and utilize the resources that God has given us. Why do we need? We need nothing. We just don't know how to strategize, right? Understand the dynamics at play and gain their interest to come in and help us move ministry. You just talk rhetoric. Get off the podium, stop talking, and get out there and do. Let's do. Not the pastors I'm talking everybody. Talking me too.
We have some musicians out there. I need y'all to send me some organ riffs so that when folk come on and preach like this, we can hit that play that little organ riff behind there when we get some preachers on like that. My.
That was powerful.
I think
that was powerful.
I agree. I think there's a certain energy that we need to get all hands on deck to really finish the work and not leave it on the shoulders of pastors, which I know some often feel. I do, and I'm not a pastor. I know people think that because of the group, but it's not at all true. Also an entrepreneur. I think that I also really want pastors to take inventory of just their own exhaustion and their own fatigue, and to really let's all build a manageable, sustainable model for what church looks like moving forward. I think that there have been, and I hear it all the time. I hear it in the group. I've just, all my life, where it's like, the pastors need to do this and the pastors have to do that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3 humans need to what now? We have to be, I hope more members are more supportive and mindful of everyone's humanity, quite frankly. And, when we're asking pastors like, church has to open, church has to open, church has to open, that's really the same thing as what we are asking, frontline workers to do. And that's not a small task, especially knowing that we are going to be taking on risk. So I would definitely want pastors to really model the self-care that is required to just be living and doing well in this space, for many different reasons. I also think that local partnerships are more important than ever. I felt this way before COVID, and I feel this way now. Like,
that.
if you have 3 people in your adventurers troop, like, go find a neighbor. Look next door and say, hey, you got 5 kids, we got 5 kids. Like, how can we work together to have sensible ministry teams that can work? What does that sharing look like? I mean, businesses do this all the time. And there could be loose. I know that's not like a traditional model, but I think it's quite frankly very forward thinking compared to some of what people have done, where they're like, I can't justify running a ministry, so I close it, and then you lose the whole family. Whereas you could maybe keep a family in for this portion, because Adventurers is only meeting once a month anyway, or Pathfinders, or maybe you want to do a pilot of a ministry, or for senior citizens who, for whatever reason, want connection. You can make that an Orlando-wide initiative and see how many people congregate, share spaces maybe monthly, like share the load. I think some of this, like, it has to be only within my building ministry or perspective is not healthy, and it's not sustainable. And like, that's not really what people aren't necessarily asking for either. So that's all I would say.
That's some good stuff. A sustainable structure, right? I think you said something about we have to have a sustainable model, and that, you know what, that's a whole different show, because I'm very interested in your concept on what do you think might work or be more effective as we look at the model of the church. We have this model, and I know my co-hosts, they always hear me say this, but we have a union, conference, division, and I like the worldwide reach. Definitely. I mean, this church, we're worldwide, we're connected. Are there some things that we can do that might, within the structure, that would be more effective, especially more appealing, maybe to, your target group or your age bracket? What can we do?
I would say I've been thinking about it for a while. I got a Peloton over quarantine, because who didn't? I mean, I know a lot of people didn't, but it was just a thing people were doing. And I think there is a church model that is very comparable to Peloton, quite frankly. Like, I can very much see, and for those who don't know what a Peloton is, and I didn't really understand it until I had one, so I don't know that I can really convey it by words alone. But Peloton has done an amazing job of, one, they sell the bike, but you don't have to have the bike. You just can have this app, and there are tons of live classes, and then classes you watch later, and they do different series of different things. And so there's like the different personalities, right, who are the classes, and those could be pastors, speakers, whatever. And if you're logged in, they do some acknowledgement, and it feels very personal. Like, you feel like you're there. They'll be like, oh, this person's in from Tennessee or whatever. And people like live for that. People want like to just be acknowledged, and they can see that there's like 6,000 people in class and whatever. But like, then there's these sub communities where there's like 100,000 people in a group about Peloton, and they're like responding to, oh, I'm all going to get on this class, and like, and all responding to each other. And that stuff feels very, 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 very real to really all of us. Right. And there's a sense of it being together. Now, again, that's not for everybody. That could be in many languages, quite frankly. That could be that like you're having people over your house and you guys are watching a particular experience together that is kind of on this digital platform. But when you listen to what the guy who started Peloton said, he said, my wife, we both love cycling. Okay. And I think this is the most important thing. Him and his wife both love cycling, but his wife was the only one who had the organizational skills to book a class on SoulCycle and a bike. You had like 30 seconds where you could like get online, pick the time that you wanted, pick the bike, and that's how you were able to get into these really exclusive classes for SoulCycle. And if you didn't get in, you couldn't get in. And that was kind of how they hyped this experience, right? And he was like, I want to get on a bike, but I can't do that, like those first 3 steps. And now he's a billionaire, right? Because he literally just said, I will give you a bike and I will put the content out there for you, and you can do it at the time we're doing it if you want. And I'm not limited to 30 people in a classroom at any one time like SoulCycle.
Oh boy.
I have tens of thousands of people on at any given time. And the people who do it later, they still have the same benefit as the people who did it at the same time. So that is a completely secular model where anything can be on that screen and anyone can be blessed. And that can be worldwide, and that could be $50 a month. I don't know, right? But I can still, the people who have Pelotons, they still go to CrossFit. They still have a mirror. They're still doing a lot of other things, right? It's not their exclusive way to fitness or community. So, the people who love God, love him all the days of the week, not just Saturday between 11 and 2 or 9 and 2, right? So how do we fill as many of those spots with powerful, God-centered experiences for people to find God in each other? If you're focused on that, you will see many, many opportunities.
Wow. Saba, I would love to argue that point if we had the time, that is purely a secular model. We can show you that's a spiritual model that God has already embedded into the fabric of what he desired the church to be able to be. We don't have time. Our time is up right now, but powerful stuff. That's like the beginning of a whole nother conversation that I think that our structure, our organization, we are desperate to have that conversation, and so many others. Both you and Pauline have just given us. I feel like we've just touched the tip of the iceberg in talking about some very real and relevant ways that the church has to consider when it comes to doing ministry going forward in and out of our building. So I just want to say thank you so much for the contribution that both of you have made to this conversation today.
Thanks so much.
Up.
We just opened up another conversation that we're going to have. But you all have been excellent. For me, giving another perspective on this whole thing about returning to the building, to that space, and realizing that let's just make sure we keep our mind focused on ministry, right? Because ministry, whether it's in the virtual space, whether it's in the personal space, ministry has to happen. And finding creative ways to do ministry, like creating community. That's the route to go. So thank you so much for coming on to Pastors Roundtable today.
What can I say?
You're welcome.
What can I say? It was fire today, as always. Thank you, ladies, for giving us something to go about. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we look forward to what next week will bring for us. So we thank God for what he's doing, what he's willing to do. And we are actually looking forward to what God is about to do in this place.
All right, it's that time. What's on the table for next week, guys?
We are talking. I think we're going to the universities, Pastor Wade. We're talking to universities, right?
That's correct. We're going to be looking at Adventist education at the university level, and talk about the unique things that we do or the unique things that we offer as a school, as a denomination in our schools that maybe some people really don't know about. And so we're going to spend some time next week talking about what colleges and universities are sharing. And we hope that you will join us and we plan to have a good conversation about the positiveness and the positive things that we have in our Adventist education.
All right, sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Are we ready to tell them who's coming to the table next week, or are we going to save that for the promo?
We're going to save that.
Okay, all right.
And
they know
Let's
exactly
save
what that means.
We're going to save it. No. We have at least one chair for it.
All right.
We're saving it.
We want to thank
It's
each
gonna
of
be a
our
surprise.
guests again, and each of you in our audience today. This has been a great conversation. It's been like the starting point, and we hope that when you come and you listen to these conversations, that you will go back somewhere and have the conversation again and dig a little deeper. Things change when we start having conversations. Ideas spark conversations. Conversations start change. And so we're excited about that. We want you to go and continue to have these conversations. Talk about them with your pastors, with your church boards, your church leaders, your conference leaders. And I guarantee you that as we talk change, the change comes right behind that. So thank you again so very much. We're going to try to get this right again today, Roger and Dion and myself. We tend to have found a way to.
No, we're going to get it right, Pastor Paul. We're going to get it right.
Yes,
but I do
right
have to
today.
say this: conversation needs application, right? So we're having conversations, but let's apply them so
There
that
you
we
go.
can see. Oh, watch this! A conversation needs application so we can experience a new revelation. Don't get me started over here.
These preachers. Yes, sir.
My Lord. Listen, we are just so glad that you joined us today at the Pastors Roundtable, where we want to partner with you to help ministry be relevant,
Resourced,
And real. God bless.